Joining us is the Resources Minister, Matt Canavan. Minister, thanks so much for your time. We saw the first current account surplus since 1975 yesterday, driven by those higher than expected iron ore prices and so on. Should we expect that to continue, do you think?
Well, look, each market will be different, Kieran, and certainly the iron ore market has been volatile over the past year. We've had some tragic dam failures in Brazil, which interrupted supply there and pushed iron ore prices up towards record highs. They've come back a bit since then, so the very, very strong figures we've seen the first half of this year are unlikely to be repeated. But the overall strength of our resource exports is very strong. We've had that bump from iron ore in the past year, but over the last 2 years, we've now got a situation where iron ore, coal and gas together export more than all other goods combined. There's been a big surge in all three of those exports, and we're now exporting about $100 billion a year more in resource exports than we were just 2 years ago. And that trade surplus you mentioned, the current account surplus you mentioned, is about $5 to $6 billion. So the resource sector making a big contribution to that outcome.
When we talk about these GDP figures that we're expecting, we are expecting that they will be impacted by global trade forces. I understand you went to India recently. Is that to try and build that market, because we do have this uncertainty in particular with China?
Well, look, we've got an overall agenda to boost our markets everywhere. We've signed as a government 3 major trade agreements with individual countries in China, Korea, Japan, and then concluded the TPP last year as well. So all of these things mean that now we've got free trade agreements covering well over 70% of our trade markets, which is great for our country, of course, and we'd like to continue that. And India obviously is a country on the rise. It's the fastest major growing country in the world. It's one of the youngest countries in the world too. Every month, 1 million Indians turn 18. It's a remarkable economy. And it's a big market for us, so we should target it, we should focus on it, we should try and build relationships, and that's what I was there doing last week. We've got an overall economic strategy for India, where we're focusing on a few different markets, and resources is one of those. So I was over there championing Australian high-quality coal, iron ore, gas, all of our resources. We've got a big opportunity there in India.
The major banks expecting pretty much across the board that the national accounts will have GDP for the June quarter growth of about 0.5% for that quarter. It's nothing, too extraordinary, but I guess in the context of the other geopolitical problems that Annalise alluded to, that's actually not bad.
Look, we have been a strongly performing economy now for a generation, nearly 30 years without a recession. In my view, what we've just got to do is stay the course. What we're doing is obviously right as a country, promoting trade, improving the efficiency of our economy, backing jobs and investment. That's what we've been doing as a government. Obviously, things outside our borders do buffet and impact our economy. And yes, there is a great degree of concern across the region around the US-China trade disagreements. As I say, there's not much we can directly do to affect that. What we've got to do is make our economy as strong as possible, invest in infrastructure, make sure we've got the right skills to match jobs, and seek to continue to develop markets like India and attract investment from all around the world to build our resilience.
But with the current account surplus we spoke about, that also reflects a weaker import, and does it also reflect a weaker consumption demand, the sentiment within the economy?
Well, a little bit. Another aspect of the reason we've run current account deficits for nearly 50 years is we've attracted investment from overseas significantly, and particularly in our resources sector. That's been a common feature of how we've developed resources in our country. They're obviously in great demand overseas, and often the people who actually are buying the product at the end, the steel mills, the power plants, directly invest in our mines. It makes sense for them to do that to secure their supplies over long term. When you attract that investment, you run a capital account surplus, which means you run a current account deficit by definition. And so investment has been down a little in the last few years as the mining boom tailed off. It's starting to pick back up, and that's what we've got to do to promote now, and that's what I'm trying to do as a Resources Minister, to promote the fact that we do have this enormous opportunity to continue to grow our resources sector. Yesterday, my department and I myself released a report on the opportunities in what's broadly termed critical minerals, things like rare earths and lithium, You know, people forget these things here, these mobile phones, if you can see them, hopefully I've got on silent for you, Kieran, but these mobile phones, they have 26 different minerals and metals in them. We produce 18 of them here in Australia. So the idea that somehow the mining industry is not as important to a modern economy is completely bunkum.
Now, Mr Canavan, you represent regional Queensland. Right now we're standing by for the outcome of this case in the Federal Court in Melbourne about this Tamil family from Billawilla. But the community wants them to stay. They're working in the community. They're embraced by the community. Do you think that this is an instance where the minister should be intervening?
Well, can I first say I do. I live near, not too far, in a couple of hours from Billawilla. Know Billow well, and I've got great respect for the community there, and respect the advocacy and lobbying they're putting on behalf of these two migrants to our country. Look, I think, though, we should not make these decisions through the media. I think it's been unfortunate the way the Labor Party are seeking to jump on this individual case for political purposes. We need to have a proper process involved here to assess each case properly and in the context of our overall policy. I think Peter Dutton is an incredibly fair but firm minister and is making the right decisions in this case.
One of the economic arguments that's been made by your leader in the Nationals, among others, is that people need to go to regional areas to boost towns like Billawilla and others. This family, the father works at the meat works, the mother volunteers for St Vinny's. This seems like a family that's very much integrated into that town and obviously very popular as well. Isn't that the sort of thing you want to happen?
Look, my defence of the proper process we have in place is no commentary at all on these individuals, and I can't comment on two people I don't know, and I don't take any question or truck with the good faith advocacy that's been put on their behalf by members of the Billawilla community. I'm just defending the fact that we have to have a proper arrangements in place for all circumstances. Now, we have got a strong and strict policy against illegal arrivals to this country that needs to be maintained to protect the overall integrity of our borders and the safety of those coming to our country. That's not inconsistent with saying, Kieran, that yes, we do need to attract people from overseas, and we do have a lot of programs that seek to place skilled migrants into regional areas in particular. Indeed, we've boosted those over the last year, and I'm sure we'll continue to back those policies. But we've got to do so in a way which conforms with our laws and therefore promotes our migration program around the world in a consistent way.
In Labor's advocacy for this family, they have taken aim at the Prime Minister's faith as a Christian. They've said that he's being unchristian by not showing compassion in this case, and even called him a hypocrite. We heard Scott Morrison today saying that he turns the other cheek. Do you think it's fair that his Christianity is being brought into this when he has been quite public about his faith and how that guides him as a leader?
Well, look, I'll leave it to the Labor Party to defend their particular approaches in this area. But what frustrates me is that, look, okay, I'm Christian, right? I've got a strong Catholic faith, and then there's a whole lot of people who push this view sometimes in public who themselves seem to have a very limited and superficial understanding of Christian ethics and faith too. I thought Greg Sheridan wrote a very compelling piece in The Australian yesterday where he actually quoted ethicists and philosophers about this. And obviously these cases are very difficult, but all of us need to evaluate these difficult cases in the context of a broader impact here. Greg Sheridan, his piece, quoted Immanuel Kant, who also came up with something called a categorical imperative, that you should act in a way in your life which, if each individual act was done universally, would make for good outcomes. And this is a problem here in cases like this. It might really tell you at the moment you want to make a good decision here for these two individuals, but what if you do that for everybody, for the 6,000 that are currently have applications in the court? That's probably not going to have the best outcomes.
Do you think one of the arguments made is that because there were cameras allowed into the Prime Minister's religious gathering, that he's allowed that to become part of the political discourse? What do you say to that sort of critique? Well,
look, I haven't said that the Labor Party shouldn't raise matters of Christian ethics. I mean, I've got no problem with that per se. I think there is a place for different ethical viewpoints to come into the public policy sphere more often, and we shouldn't somehow say that any ethical system based on religious views is somehow not allowed into these sort of debates. Because if you look back at our history over time, it's often been religion that has very directly impacted public policy in Western societies and communities in a positive way, I think. I just think sometimes the bandy about the word Christian here is not particularly well thought through. And not surprisingly, given that the likes of Christina Keneally are really trying to make contribution for a 10-second soundbite on the news, not a detailed ethical treatise about what should happen in these very complex circumstances.
Matt Canavan from Queensland, thank you for your time.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.